On this edition of the program, we take you to the capital of the United States of America, where the Summit of Young African Leaders held. We sat down with some inspiring African youth, and you do not want to miss what they have to say. Let's take a look. Standing by with me is a very versatile young leader from the Republic of South Africa, Nomfundo Mkhize. You're very welcome to the program.
Sawubona Ajuri, that's the official greeting in my home language, isiZulu, all the way from KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started from the business side of what you do. As I mentioned earlier, you're quite a versatile young leader. What got you into the shipping and logistics industry?
Wow, so I did an LLB in school, and it's amazing how you use the word versatile, because I found that my life has been very versatile and I've been able to answer to my various passions. So I did an LLB, which is a law degree in university. One of the modules that we did was maritime law. So I got to find out about this shipping world and the contracts behind it. But I wanted to know more about it and why young black people didn't have access to it or didn't understand mostly about it in my home country in South Africa. So I started looking into logistics and learning about the logistics side of shipping and not just the contractual side. And so I fell in love with the practical logistics side versus the contractual side that I'd actually studied. So from there, I opened a business with other amazing young black women back home in South Africa. And basically we identified a gap that was missing in the South African, or that was there in the South African shipping industry. First of all, the cost of logistics is just too high in South Africa. And the reason for that is that transport accounts for 57% of logistics costs, as opposed to the global average of 40%. We thought this was problematic, especially in a struggling economy, and in an economy that needs to survive on the backbone of SMMEs. And the hardest hit are SMMEs in the shipping industry. So if the big companies are able to afford 57% of transport costs in logistics, what is the pain of an SMME? And we found out that they were paying up to 100% more than big corporates, because as we all know, shipping is about economies of scale. So larger companies are able to commit to larger volumes, drastically driving down their costs. SMMEs are not able to commit to the same amount. So then they suffer the pain. So we thought, let's come together, let's get SMMEs under one banner, and let's, under this one banner, bring them into a world where they are able to commit to large volumes, where they're able to access credit facilities that they wouldn't access on their own, and the most importantly, able to access South Africa's railway line, which is very underutilized, because SMMEs can't afford the insurities that are so expensive. So South Africa is only utilizing 36% of its rail capacity. But under the small enterprise railway group, we're hoping that capacity is going to grow, because we can get more SMMEs off the road and onto the railway, also helping with carbon emissions.
Your focus is clearly around the plight of SMMEs, as opposed to, say, a particular demographic within the SMMEs. So you're talking white business, Asian business, Indian business, and black business, all under one umbrella. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, our biggest clients are at Chinese malls that we see coming all over South Africa and all over Africa. You'd find under one Chinese mall about 500 different SMMEs of also different races. So we speak to those clients.
Now, you're not just involved, of course, in the business side within shipping and logistics. You're also involved in media and sensitization. Can you give us a bit of insight into what role you play within the South African media space?
So I work for the biggest radio station on the African continent, actually. Its name is Ukhozi FM. We have a listenership of 7.6 million listeners. I broadcast in my home language, which is isiZulu. And I do youth programming there. I focus a lot on the entrepreneurial space, giving voices and entrepreneur voices from rural areas in particular, a platform for them to come and sell their businesses and promote their businesses, and also a platform where young people can be shaped and young people can learn and ask questions about the rapidly changing world around us, especially when it comes to the economy, especially when it comes to technology, and obviously the new digitalization age that we're finding ourselves into. So we have lovely, interesting conversations about that. But most importantly and most proudly, we challenge our young listeners to come up with the solutions and be the solutions themselves to the problems that they face daily. And we encourage them that when they're able to do that, then they are able to be entrepreneurs rather than look up to government to provide them with all the solutions.
Gradually, we've seen, particularly within the educational institutions, we've seen kind of this melding pot of the races coming together and really kind of exemplifying that notion of the Rainbow Nation. Can you give us a sense of when you're speaking to your audience, particularly in isiZulu, how important it is to you to advance that narrative of inclusion, of unity and harmony and peaceful coexistence?
I think one of the things that makes South Africa's constitution so great in the world is that it's very inclusive. And what I believe as a broadcaster is that young people can only work together once they understand each other and they respect each other. So that's the message and the narrative that I talk about when I broadcast, is that we need to learn about each other's religions, learn about each other's cultures, learn about each other's languages, because I think that fosters a breeding ground for respect, that fosters a breeding ground for collaborations and networks. I think so often when we isolate ourselves in our own races, sometimes we end up isolating ourselves from other networks and other collaborations. This, of course, is not an easy thing in South Africa because of our recent past and apartheid and people still changing their mindsets. But sometimes it's okay to be the first one to reach out first. And we encourage that in young people.
You know, one of the very kind of intriguing elements of South African society is that we talk a lot about racial diversity and inclusion and things of that nature, but one of the areas where South Africa has really gotten it right is the area of ethnic harmony, where you have the Zulus very peacefully coexisting with the Xhosa and with other ethnic groups within the country. Can you give us a sense of how that came to be and why that is not the case in some other African countries?
I think when you are faced with a government that isolates you and discriminates because of your skin color, all you have is somebody who has the same skin color as you to group with. So what that does is it forces the Zulus and the Xhosas and any other Nguni ethnic group to come together, the Bedis, the vendors, to come together and unite, because sono setu, ubumnyama betu, is one of the sayings, is that our sin was just the color of our skin, which was black. So we were able to then integrate and appreciate things that we normally wouldn't have been able to appreciate if we all didn't face the same discrimination based on the same issue of just our skin color. I think on the African continent, because it's not skin color that's the problem, it becomes language that's the problem. It becomes cultural practices that becomes the issue. So you find those people not being forced to understand each other more, and not having that difference that we then had in South Africa. So I think though apartheid was bad for us, but it did well to unite our ethnic groups, and we've been the more better for that.
That's very, very interesting.